So, thanks everyone for joining us. Again, my name is Simmons Bunton. I am the editor in chief of terrain.org. And I'm going to say a few things before I turn it over to our moderator, Derek Sheffield. So, again, as you join us in the chat, let us know where you're from. I'm from here in Tucson, Arizona, which is in southern Arizona. And I respectfully acknowledge my presence on the traditional and ancestral lands of the O'odham and the Pascua Yaqui. I want to thank our readers this evening, Karen An-hwei Lee, Kevin Gooden, and Kimberly Burwick. And I want to thank you, audience members, for joining us, for taking a little bit of your Thanksgiving week and sharing that with us. I think that you're going to really enjoy the reading tonight. I know I'm very grateful that you could all be here. And so I'm giving thanks to you for that. And I want to thank Derek Sheffield for moderating the reading this evening, coming to us tonight from his basement in Leavenworth, Washington. So if your connection becomes slow, you may want to turn off your video. In all cases, please remain muted, but you are welcome to post your questions and other positive feedback in chat, and we'll open it up to audio questions after the reading as well. We are recording this and all of our readings, and are happy to make those available from the terrain.org events page as well as from our YouTube channel. And probably takes me, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 days, something like that. It's a holiday, so sometime after Thanksgiving I should have that up, I think. And of course, you're welcome to officially follow our YouTube channel as well. So this series is held on the fourth Monday of every month. This is our last reading of 2021. This is our 10th of this year. And I guess we can thank the pandemic for that. It's a great way to keep in touch via these online readings, and as an online venue, that seems to make a lot of sense for us, so we'll continue to do that in 2022, beginning in January. Although I don't have the lineup yet to share with you, but it's going to be exciting, and that'll be Monday, January 22nd. So mark it on your calendars now. Let's see. I will be posting links to our readers' work in terrain.org, as well as their book links in the chat in support of our readers this evening. But if you missed those, or if you want to find other books from tonight's readers or other terrain.org contributors, I invite you to hop on over to the bookshop page, which is at bookshop.org/shop/terrain.org, or find the link under the About menu item on the terrain.org website. So, if I may, here one day before Giving Tuesday, our little donors announcement. Terrain.org is the world's first online environmental journal, publishing since 1998. We are an all-volunteer organization that doesn't charge to access our content, nor charge to submit, with the exception of our annual contest, nor contain advertising. Indeed, we are run by the power of goodwill and dedicated weekends and evenings and sometimes even holidays. And we are run by donations from good folks like you, who are welcome to donate online at terrain.org/donate. And again, tomorrow is Giving Tuesday, which might be the perfect time for you to consider donating to Terrain Publishing to support terrain.org. So thank you for your support, for being part of the terrain.org community. All right. Now that that is out of the way, let's get on to the show this evening. So we're going to have a reading, as you know, that's why you're here, followed by a Q&A. Please post your questions in the chat area, although you'll have a chance to ask after the reading as well. And again, thanks for joining us. So it's my pleasure now to introduce tonight's host, poetry editor Derek Sheffield. Derek Sheffield's collection, Not for Luck, was selected by Mark Doty for the 2019 Wheelbarrow Books Poetry Prize and published on January 1st of this year. His other books include Through the Second Skin, which was a finalist for the Washington State Book Award, and Dear America, Letters of Hope, Habitat, Defiance, and Democracy. And Derek, maybe when you jump on, you can tell us when your Cascadia Field Guide is publishing as well. When Derek isn't teaching at Wenatchee Valley College or editing poetry for terrain.org, and it's rare that I let him do anything other than edit poetry for terrain.org, I must be honest, Derek can be found skiing, hiking, birding, botanizing, or forest bathing in the mountains of north central Washington. And you may also be able to find him earlier this month acting in a local high school play. So, that said, Derek, let me turn it over to you. Take it away, my friend.
Well, thank you, my friend. bio was far too revealing. Yes, it is true. I am a frequent practitioner of Shinrin-yoku in the woods of north central Washington, where I'm coming from you tonight. This is the ancestral homeland of the Pisquosa. That tribe is a member of the Colville Confederated Tribes, and one of my most gifted poetry students ever, Carly Feddersen, is a Colville tribal member, and she has actually brought her poetry into jewelry design. So if you have some Christmas shopping to do, some holiday Christmas shopping or anything like that to do, I encourage you to check out Carly Feddersen's work. Here's an example of it. It's a little deer man skull critter, and I just love it. Silver and onyx. So yeah, Colville tribal member Carly Feddersen. I know she has an Instagram site that has some of her work on there, and it's En Feddersen. So delighted to be here with you. We're going to go in this order. Kim is going to start us off, and then Kevin will be reading, and then we'll finish with Karen. Afterwards, we'll have time for a little bit of conversation. So if you have questions during the program, please drop them into the chat, right? Simmons, we're using the chat for questions, and Simmons and I, and maybe Elizabeth Dodd, our partner in crime, will be keeping an eye out for them and try to get them to our readers tonight. So with that, let me just say a few things about Kimberly Burwick, who is joining us tonight from New Hampshire. She teaches at Colby Sawyer College. Her 6th collection of poems, called Out Beyond the Land, is forthcoming from Carnegie Mellon University Press in the spring of 2022. So, which actually means February. So not too much, not too far from now. Her 6th book is coming out. If you can't wait until that one comes out, if you can't figure out how to pre-order it, there are 5 others that are out there and can be had right now, including Brightwood, Custody of the Eyes, Goodnight Brother, which won the 2013 Burnside Review Book Prize, and Has No Kinsman. Kimberly, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
And there we are. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you so much, Derek, Simmons, Karen, and Kevin, who ironically is literally just in the other room, but a wall prevents me from seeing him. So, and thank you all for sharing an hour of your night to hear us read poetry. This is really cool. I haven't given a reading since before the pandemic, so I'm probably a little rusty. So I think I'll read a few from Brightwood, which came out ironically just a few months before the pandemic hit. So I never really read from it. So it'll be lovely to do that. You might just need a tiny bit of background without going into too much detail, especially because this is an environmental literary journal. We have a now 10-year-old. When I was writing this, our son Levi was about 4 and was diagnosed with a serious heart condition. Simultaneously, he was becoming obsessed, literally obsessed with the environment. And so the book deals with, our anxiety as parents about his heart, and then his anxiety simultaneously about the environment. So the two become somewhat linked. And these do not have titles. Let me know if you can hear me okay. When my son's ascending aorta doubles, I map the earth that rushes on. Ask the cardiologist to calculate the curve and value of everything chestward, brightward, beyond the pitching seeds of lilies and lilacs, as they make calm and flesh the same green force. The boy in symmetry and balance and dirt, his minuscule frame dense as honey under the influence of gravity. Some of these poems have Levi's actual lines that he just would sort of say here and there throughout the day over a course of a few years that I would jot down. So I think he really kind of co-wrote this with me. Your great artery has no metaphor, will not dissolve into middle clouds, the sudden cirrus fall streaks. You hold copper ice chunks on the comma of our snowbank, the wind at wind speed, such vertebrae in the tangled water, organs, cell parts, the definite and indefinite integers, so awkward in their charm and function. The moan doesn't only darken, it weeps dark lilacs. It ferries a line collapsing in joy, that you can make a castle, that rocks fall into the whole of elements. Lavender, a wool heart, a wild eat, all soil in one pure word, as in being weaned, as in the milk of the dead is the dead, as with cows, mothers, stages of wheat, seedling, tillering, boot swollen, before early milk, early dough, losing green color, the bright wall of bastard veins in a brassy wind. You see a deer and say, it's a she. I know how a girl deer ruins the apples. So I think I'll move on to, I don't have it in book form, I still have it in manuscript form. Some poems that will be coming out in Out Beyond the Land in February. One thing to get out of the way, they all have these very weird Latin titles, and I'm not a Latin speaker, but it was the only thing that felt right for titling these poems. So if I mispronounce the title, I'm terribly sorry. I was over across the room failing French. The Latin teacher could probably hear me from there. So, ex postulo, and that means a call for urgency, a sort of I demand. Later, ocean is drawn to its margins. The water's green wax left ungnawed. No bluefish bulky in the sediment. You ask the humblest parasite to cling to the odd punk of driftwood. No love for the gods who have gone under. No iron birds melted down. You give me your stuffed seal pup to wash, as if to launder the delicate grown thick, the breathy distress of now. So this idea of being out beyond the land, both literally and figuratively, I think Levi's influence still kind of finds its way through. However, in some ways, I was kind of thinking about the passing of my parents as well. Femina. Call this unfolding an oscillation of sea, blue-eyed and deaf to its own astonishing. Old sand giving no answer, like the logger-headed duck, poor diver, incapable of true flight. Part of going lonely is being struck by feathers. I must say a few words to God now, flaring such sunset, all of my hair is cardinals. Infinitus. Ocean is a tendency, the part of us that turns unreal with petals, the way a horse becomes dolphin when it touches sea. A boy crosses a bridge with a homemade slingshot, the world and its linings with its quiet weaponry. Lector, not Hannibal Lecter, but just lector, reader. Cranes, nurseries for animals, codes in wetlands, the dwindled wanting. I'm afraid they're calling your name, your given name. Earth takes its makeshift parents into waist-deep water. No one may go near the just hatched chicks who delay their disappearance. The birds are asleep in miles of century and act out in captured light, vulnerable maybe to the sight of a body. I'm not sure how am I doing on time, Derek? I don't have a watch.
Man, I have no idea. I've been really listening closely.
Okay. Well, I'll read a few more. I don't want to take up too much.
I'm in poem land. I think you're
Okay.
fine. I think it's been like 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll read slower. Nada, meaning sailor. Ocean buried in the high dark sands. Ocean with crawl and shyness outwept of its riptides. Over its inhalations of osprey, I cough sunlight and can't be sure if I've eaten. Crabs, sea lilies, and brittle stars. Feather corals tremendous in their seamounts. I reach for what I can't normally reach. Now, I tried Google a few times here. This title is Acer, A-C-E-R, and I got a few different pronunciations. A chair, Acer, a cheer. So I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I know that Latin teacher is long since passed, so makes me feel better. Maple with the skulls of young birds will cost you everything. I pour you a glass of milk, warm and salty as the new grave of great flies, the air a dead sea of leaf and rain. I am with knots in my hair, cleaning all dust, all driving wind, feather footing the weather change. Please come for me, should I go out beyond the land. I'm so sorry, we have a very loud kitten. He doesn't like to be left out. And a somewhat naughty kitten. Imperial, to make visible. Hamstrung by their close resemblance to ghost, early apples, the Paula reds, sweet enough to make a grave unsteady. Whomever saved me never looked up, but held awfully cold doves in green loops of field air. So much math in early trees, mom and dad, each a slice of knot unsolved, their bodies healed and flown, enough room to unravel 11 kinds of crossings. Odox, bold. Light of the kinglet, remind us we are burning too. Have I already said this? Have I in fresh water and slack wonder been breathing the wind all along? The sky is buttered, then pulses blue. Look, falling rain. I'll just read a few more. Cautela, caution. For all we know, we haven't been terrible, but nesting, fluent in quiver. But you are barefoot in the language of the lamb milk clouds. Aortic light, real as any one heart. The planet itself resting on the cool, half-halted riot of monarchs. I mean all of it, the north-facing century, even if we don't keep seated in rolling chant in hemlock tangles. Diurnitus, duration, long duration. I have to lie a little about the fresh water here. Shock the self-sown furs into final stars. Anything small could choose me because we must go away raw, because only animals interrupt the shedding tears of chestnuts curled up in the throes of older chestnuts. Even the explicit order of soil is a completely strange story, deep, hot, and acting like dust. And I'll just finish this last one. Divinits, divine. So alone, I've become a hexagon, one of the living roots. But you, little witness, You with your musk turtles, scraps of duckweed in your flaxen hair, your body reading its own red clover, a gland of cloud and trouble. The startling fact of nectar, you and the pond matter, starting all over for what I assume is love that stepped forward in the rained on grace between lives. Thank you so much.
Wow. I'm clapping so you can hear all the clapping going on.
I'll mute myself so we can hear the two great ones tonight, Kevin and Karen.
As you all can hear, Kimberly's poems are so finely wrought, and they're such a delight to read on the page. So I know you're going to want to have that experience. You can get some of them. Simmons posted some of the links to her work on terrain.org, where we've been fortunate enough to publish them. Just beautifully read, and I think I would just say that they really bear up well under multiple readings. You find more and more in the quiet time you can spend with them on the page. And I especially love, Kimberly, how Levi has clambered into your lines. I was disappointed not to hear about any fire engines. However, I'm just, I'll talk to you later about that. Now, listen, it's time to talk about Kevin Gooden. And as we do so, I want to send out a special thanks to Juniper Moon, who many years ago kindly introduced me to the work of Kevin. And whatever you do, don't make the mistake I did. Don't go look at his photo on the Poetry Foundation website, because I actually delayed. Juniper had said, hey, there's this really cool guy in the area now, Kevin Gooden, great poet, you got to check him out. And so I as soon as she said that, I did, and I went and saw his photo on the Poetry Foundation website, and don't do this, whatever you do. And I was like, hold it, that guy looks like he has a huge optic white diesel truck, and he wants to kick my ass. And I'm serious, that's what that photo says. So, but then I did finally get to meet Kevin, and I found out that he actually has a blue pickup. So, everything was fine. He was born in Montana and raised on the Flathead Indian Reservation, where his stepfather and brothers are tribal members. Gooden earned his bachelor's from the University of Montana and worked as a firefighter for 10 years with the U.S. Forest Service before receiving his MFA from the University of Massachusetts Amherst in 2004. He has taught at the University of Connecticut and served as visiting writer at Wesleyan University. He currently lives in the Upper Valley region of New Hampshire, somewhere near Kimberly Berwick, we intuit. His poetry collections include the just published Spot Weather Forecast, which has been earning some high praise from Alan Braden here. And I think once Alan weighed in, NPR needed to jump on it. You may have heard Steve Inskeep interviewing and Noelle, what's her name? Noelle. Steve Inskeep and Noelle were talking with Kevin Gooden a couple of weeks ago on Morning Edition on NPR. What a joy to hear you on there, Kevin, in all your quiet ways. I think the New York Times better get their act on this book. Okay. Anything coming out with NYT, Kevin, let us know later. Okay. Have your people call our people. And we and terrain.org we have been especially grateful to publish many poems from this collection, and have been so honored to do so. When you get a chance, maybe I bet Simmons will give you the link in the chat. Take a look at the poems, some of the poems from this book that are paired with wet plate photographs from Adam Atavi. Really sublime pairing going on there between the image and the word. So that's that. And then there was Anaphora, which came out, I think, just a couple of years ago, and was another book, I think, kind of like this one, and that it felt like it just sort of came out in this incredible rush. This came out in such a rush, she didn't even have time to put titles on the poems, for goodness sake. Other books include Let the Voices, Upper Valley Disturbances, Winter Tenor, and In the Ghost House, Acquainted. Here he is, fresh from NPR, Kevin Gooden.
Thank you, Derek. Can people hear me? Thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Simmons. Thank you, Karen, and Gesundheit, Kim. So I'm going to read some poems from Spot Weather Forecast. So I worked for, as Derek said, 10 years for the Forest Service fighting fires. 3 of those years were on the Lola Hotshot crew. And so these poems engage that experience. And they don't have titles, so. Because the first condition of the universe is fire. Because fire is the emergence and culmination of a cycle. Because fire is a product of rise over run. Because fire itself is narrative. Because the correlation of breathing in the proximity of flame is part of the story. Because we purse our lips to intensity. Because of the angle of the body to ash. Because the Pulaski is the vehicle of the power. Because the power is gained in its arc. Because shins are rock bruised and bloody. Because the legs do not flinch anymore at the tool's deflection. Because adrenaline is a feast for the body, brain euphoric. Because fear is the instinct. Because the crown fire is above you. Because fire can double back on an anchor point. Because the chinking of tools and rocks grow syncopated and scattered. Because our very breath is fuel to the fire. Little bird, do not spirit away. Because our labor is an orchestration. Because our weather girl is 6'3" with a full beard and answers to Toad. Because Toad takes weather every half hour, then 15 minutes, then is constantly swinging the gauge. Good Toad, bad Toad, fuck. Because the burnout operation from the river to the
How do you
ridge.
mute someone?
At once, 2 birds of flame rise outside the line. Because the underside of the crown fire is fire. Because we smack talk the flame front to resist its trancing conventions. Because it is there, always there, my urge to enter the fire. This next piece is actually on the Terrain website with the images from the wet plates that Adam Montavi and I worked together on. Most believe flames are greedy, indiscriminate, consume what lies in their path. Flames choose what feeds them. This drainage, not that. This house, but not others around it. This body crowned in fire while the rest are taken bit by bit. At night, we dream the ignition, all the homonyms of action, the wrinkled air holding for a moment what used to be, gated wise, a king radio melting between coordinates to safety, a buckle, scrap of belt, a few threads of canvas where the pack skidded along, strip of boot, a glove. The unconsumed and the unconceived, are we not inheritors of ash, the colors of now, the land in its rending? That which is brittle has ruptured, cracked, germinated, taken root in us. Have these not blurred the haunting? Horseman, horseman, I hear you near. The sound, blades dig through rock, this body, the others. Sun purpled at its apex, strange wind twisting trees before they ignite, convection killing the buckbrush, white berries bursting into char. This is now, the journey in which nothing is augury and what is called fate resides in the aleatoric of flame. Here is the language of incineration. How far can a body run when it's encased in fire? How do we convey the transference into ash? To trap, to keep what is known to us? What do we do when all the 1,000-hour fuels have ignited? When crews were finally able to recover the bodies, they found broken the fingers in each gloved hand. This poem will be a little bit longer. We give our lungs to the fire, their frothy, pink and trembling capacities, the hinge work of our knees also. What's good of our backs we give, discs in the spine flattened, springing to the nerves, shoulders tendon bright, straining the sockets. We give bruise, we give gash, whatever bleeds, bleeds. Shin bones divoted from tool blows. Armpits raw from sweat-rimed Nomex, grating under line gear straps. Heels blistered gelled, popping. Back of neck seared, blistered, give ankles hobbled, ligaments tattered, sutured, tattered. Skin we give to ember, to aramids, to the long memory cancer has. Ears given to squelch, break, rotor wash. A far voice calling weakly for water, for God, who is water, out there in the brittle woods. Give lips heat crazed, blubbering, double time, water boiling from eyes, lashes, rancid nubs, a beard, mustache, smoldering, tobacco spit, tobacco slobber, fingers in gloves, in ash swollen, putty to the bone, lactic surge in arms, in calves, as we pause, swiping back the grime-slicked hair, then bending to our ash dark art once more. This next poem will have some technical terms specific to fire, but I think you will probably get the gist of what's being mentioned. At H4 Division Delta, we huddle in a reeky air of soot, char, flesh unwashed and waxy in Nomex and line gear as we scan the mosaic of the dwindling fire. False draw scathed, wet draw seared, islands of green below the thermal belt. Some open the last MREs, hoard tiny Tabasco bottles. Some sharpen tools, repack gear, calculate the manifest, the weight of each sling load. Some tune to chatter on the handheld, squelch out codes, helibase, helitac, strike team, Cat 2 crews, con crews, digger squad, bucket drops, lead plane, dozer boss. So many names in the smoke as the inversion sloughs towards us, we who torched this Eden and will again. I'll just read one more piece. In this poem, there's 4 names that are mentioned, and there are 4 people that I worked with on the shot crew, the hot shot crew, and also one gentleman was on another hot shot crew. And unfortunately, they each met their demise. One died on a fire in '94. Storm King was the name of the fire, and the others met their demise by other means. But I worked with them, and so this is my way of remembering them. And it'll be the last poem. We step from the ash, and ghosts greet us with rough hands from across the line, wanting their names to be spoken in the still and darkening air. And when we say Fisher, Stam, Mackie, Touchette, they crack their ghost smiles and guide us back toward the pale and waiting flames. Thank you.
Ooh, man. Fisher, Stam, Mackie, Touchette. I love how art can honor those people you worked with in that way. You all may have heard there one of the lines in Kevin's poems there is, we give our lungs to the fire. And I'll tell you, that's not a metaphor. Kevin, you may have heard it as he was reading. He has a much reduced lung capacity, and so there's a kind of authenticity to the man and to the poems, I think, everywhere. And I remember when I first started reading these poems, I thought about, and I wasn't surprised when the NPR reporter started comparing the work to writers who've written about war. And I remember it was Brian Turner's work that gave me the term embedded poet. And his work was so, here bullet, I was teaching that so much, a lot. It was really helpful during the early years of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. And so I thought about that term again with these poems, with these firefighting poems, an embedded poet as a firefighter. Thank you, Kevin. Whew. Well, we decided to, we wanted to save Karen for the last, because one of the recurring themes in her new book, Rose is a Verb, is happiness. And so we're going to have some happiness tonight. Okay. Thank you, Karen. So this is it. This is still warm off the press. Rose is a Verb, and it's really a fascinating collection of neo-Georgics. I think, if I'm pronouncing that right, I'm a reader, so I mean, I think I've just seen the term in, I think maybe Alicia Stallings or Rose McClarney introduced me to it in their poems. And of course there was that Virgil guy, right? Anyway, yeah, really, really fascinating poems of place and people and other topics, as I said, happiness. So her other books include, so you can get that one now. You can also get Phyla of Joy, Ardor. Sensing a theme here. Happiness, Phyla of Joy, Ardor. Okay, In Medias Res, how's that for some Latin, is another book title. That was the winner of the Norma Farber First Book Award. She has authored 2 novels, Sonata in K and The Maze of Transparencies, and Lee's translations of Ling Qingjiao's writing Doubled Radiance, Poetry and Prose of Li Qingjiao, is the first volume in English to collect Lee's work in both genres. Her book of literary criticism, Anglophone Literatures in the Asian Diaspora, Literary Transnationalism and Translingual Migrations, was selected for the Cambria Sinophone World Series. Now, currently she serves as a provost at Wheaton College, making her the first provost to ever appear in the Terrain.org reading series, but she tells us that tonight she is a poet. Welcome, Karen, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Derek, for the marvelous introduction. I hardly recognize myself. And such a delight to share this virtual space with Kim and with Kevin and with Simmons also for hosting. Thank you so much for the gracious invitation. I'll start with some of the new poems in Rose is a Verb. And this is a manuscript that took me 10 years to get out into the world. And so, you know, poets have to have a lot of patience, and you send around to the various publishers, and sometimes it's a yes, and most of the time it's a no. So this is a book that would be in, what, 10 years old, 5th grade for a manuscript if it were a child. So it came about because I was writing in community and also teaching at a writing festival at St. John's College in Santa Fe, and assigning some exercises that involved people writing immersed in the environment and nature and just observing light, observing plant life, and, you know, just being conscious of living things around them. And I wrote exercises alongside the students as well. Those exercises became cycles of poems that I continued to generate after teaching at the writing festival, and eventually became a manuscript. As I looked at the pages, I noticed that there's some parallels between what I was writing, and I was living in California then, now I live in Greater Chicago, what I was writing then, and Virgil's Georgics. So Georgics is about Georgics, it's about agrarian science, long time ago. And it's also, you know, thematically, there are motifs about the pursuit of happiness and what it means to live purposefully, and what does human experience all amount to. And so I was also probing those kinds of questions and writing these exercises as they came together as a manuscript. So I'll read a couple excerpts here. Gold black cadenza of noons. Nanograms of rose-plumed bullion towed onto furred heads of pollen. Frenzy shot through salvos of gold, wind speed over wingspan. A bee's mass far exceeds its airfoil, yet its speed verbs a heliotrope's ear, humming, I rose, I rose, I rose. The sage asks, is labor a miracle or levitation of the mundane? Oyster moss, gold black cadenza of noons, of brassy squash blossoms, loaded with pollen cargo, powdered queens of unbleached wax, of honey, royal lactin, never smoked or drank, fondness of calla lilies, with napes of neon trailing to a sea. Yes, kissing astro silk, kindness stroked out of milkweed, epidemics, fruit bat fever. Do no harm. So in the original Georgics, there are also portions where, for whatever reason, and I'm not a classicist, so I don't know the answers to these questions, but maybe some of you do. He writes about these vanquished Asian cities that presumably have to do with conquests in Virgil's era. So I decided to be gently subversive and write about unvanquished Asian cities and sort of tweak the dichotomies that are set up about these mystical Asian cities that are historically vanquished, according to Virgil in his Georgics. List of unvanquished Asian cities. Asian cities are flourishing. Asian cities are vanishing. Asian cities are in quarantine. Asian cities are open. Asian cities reclaim their industrial legacies. Asian cities return to their roots. Asian cities design communal farms with government seed funds. Asian cities generate an excess of light pollution. Asian cities are too dim. Asian cities boast of their seaside night markets. Asian cities fail to offer fishermen modest tax incentives. Asian cities grill fine-boned fish like mackerel, skin on. Asian cities drink the blood of goats. Asian cities sell pangolins and bats. Asian cities import hot goods. Asian cities export cold cash. Asian cities are the nouveau riche. Asian cities are ancient empires. Asian cities are filled with eyes. Asian cities are none of the above. Asian cities are beyond the above. Asian cities are unvanquished. A wave in my apple murmurs, one day I will send a flock of invitations to sages and fruit sellers in San Diego, Jakarta, or Mumbai. There I shall swim as divers do, with a headlamp on my forehead, breaking the surface with my face, by a pod of dolphins grazing a sleek kelp forest's flexing torque of caress, a mini glade of strangers. A wave in my apple murmurs, not here, take a right, a flea market in the cul-de-sac, frothing with dahlias, anthuriums, roses, and lilies. Why not wrap a dozen in paper? Late sunlight blesses the skin of mangoes rolled in cayenne pepper, sold in wax pretzel bags and fruit stands by the gutter. So I reach for those. Fire-blighted apple says, please do not idealize the rural life either. Our lost city of angels barricades a street where the last bookstore in the world opens its bronze Art Deco doors to an echolalia of glad voices shouting over biodegradable honey straws and grapes. Tough tenderness of those calloused mango slices, fingers of a harpist stroking those bands of light. I will recover your shattered fuselage of dreams. If healing comes to you, magnify God. If you do not seek healing, magnify God. Even if healing eludes you, magnify God. So I'd like to read a poem that's not by me, from this anthology published by our friends, edited by Simmons and by Derek and also Elizabeth Dodd. And this is a poem by the amazing Chinese American poet Arthur Z. And Arthur Z, you know, I don't know him personally, but I've been so close to his work. You should definitely pick up the anthology and also any of his award-winning books. This is a poem called Bridge, and he was on faculty for many, many years at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe and mentored poets like Sharon Bitsui and James Thomas Stevens, who taught a poetry class that I took as a student and has been so influential both to Indigenous poets and also to Asian American poets. This is called Bridge by Arthur Z. Just as the sky brightens over this ridge, it darkens over that river. Me, my, mine. Wants to string barbed wire along this fence, along that wall, from a bridge over a river. Lights of two countries glimmer at dusk. Here, I pull a translucent cactus needle out of your hand. Arthur Z. So now I'll read three short prose poem type flash fiction pieces from a forthcoming book. This is a collaboration. As I mentioned, I enjoy writing in communities, also in solitude, and also collaboratively. This is a collaboration called Souvenirs with the poet novelist Andrew Caruso. Caruso is a professor at the MFA program at Brown University, my alma mater, and I only met him fairly recently, in fact, right before the pandemic. And so we started corresponding, and he proposed a book project that traces imaginative histories of literary objects, hence souvenirs. And I'll read one of these souvenirs, which is a imagined literary history or literary imaginative labyrinth of the photographer's cloth, which appears in Elizabeth Bishop's poem, The Man Moth. This will all make sense when you hear how it kind of maps out. So this is from Souvenirs. It's forthcoming in April from Baobab Press, and it's already on their website and Barnes and Noble and some indie online bookshops, so you can check it out there as well. This is Photographer's Clock. Fluttering like an origami moth in the city of moonlit facades, the photographer's cloth takes flight over the heads of children on their way home from evening rehearsals at the conservatory. The string quartets, the classical woodwinds like flutes and clarinets and oboes, the chamber orchestras with little fleets of violins, violas, and cellists, and of course the lone bass trombone. A clandestine photographer ducks under his cloth. It looks as if a shape-shifting shadow sidles along a wall, an object of polymorphism, origami dove, a lotus, a frog, and a paper grasshopper of 16 folds. So I'll read another excerpt from one of these literary histories. This is called Black Jade, and I pulled it out of the poem called The Fish by Marianne Moore. The black jade isn't actually black or jade. It's seaweed or kelp, consisting of alginate and soda ash, the ribboned underwater forests brushing the underside of barges and ferries, caressing the seafaring vessels of tea and clouds alike. You can't use this lump of black jade to carve a large chest of drawers with a semblance of lacquer. You can't use it to fashion the rigging of a yacht or a catamaran, but it's as strong, loosely braided in strands from a rootless thallus, flowing with glassy abandon like a mermaid's unfastened hair. The kelp entangles the legs of swimmers. Each of these little prose sections actually goes on for quite a while, so I'm just reading a little tidbit. The last one I'll read as an excerpt is called Black Spice Cake. And I was sharing with Simmons, Kevin, Kim, and also with Derek before all of you joined us. Said, I've lived in California for 2 decades. Now I live in Greater Chicago, but I grew up in New England. And so Emily Dickinson was one of the very early poets that I was introduced to, I think in elementary school, actually. So I have all sorts of Emily Dickinson stuff. I'm here in my writing space. Emily Dickinson paperweight with a 5-cent Emily Dickinson stamp. There you go. It says, to live is so startling, it leaves but little room for other occupations, though friends, if possible, are an event more fair. One of her letters. And I just received this Emily Dickinson card with Emily Dickinson stickers in it from a colleague at work, knows I'm a fan. So Black Spice Cake, as many of you probably know, is reference to Emily Dickinson's recipe for black spice cake, where you soak it in, some sort of liquor, and then put it in the cellar for a couple of months. They had a different attitude towards mold back in the day, and supposedly delicious. So 20 egg yolks or so, very rich cake. So this is drawn from Black Spice Cake. The cake is dark as the perpetual midnight of polar winters where a reclusive poet will never visit. Her soul veiled in the handmade lace of her own design. In other words, solitude. It's not seasonal affective disorder, rather what modern folks call agoraphobia. Her companion today is a loaf made of 19 eggs. Okay, not 20, 19. 19 eggs, 5 pounds of raisins, 2 pounds of butter, 1.5 pounds of currants, all baked in a milk pail. For flavoring, use 5 teaspoons of cloves, mace, and cinnamon. Don't forget to soak it in 1/2 pint each of brandy and molasses. Nowadays, we eat ginger chocolate ganache, rich and dark as a pile of velvet, moist as spring mud on your bare hands. Black spice cake takes a long time, never mind banging the nutmeg by hand in the kitchen, then grating the scarlet seed covering for mace. We bake persimmon and fruit cake for the holidays and pineapple upside down cake in the summer. To serve a gathering, we make blueberry kuchen in a large baking pan or a strawberry trifle with ladyfingers. The only significant marker of this mystical spice cake is its invisible attachment to a poet by a transparent silvery cord. The loaf, dense as the body of a planet, sprinkled with carbon, ages in a windowless cellar for a month. Yet I surmise the attitudes towards mold and mildew were more generous back then, more accepting when the poet was alive. The black spice cake bakes 5 to 6 hours at a low temperature. In a poet's dream, every ounce of ground nutmeg changes into a blackbird in flight across the night sky. The spices traveled by ship from the southern seas, then cargo train from the panhandle, or maybe by ship all the way to the northeastern seaport. Is the cake done yet? The poet laughs. What's so funny? 1, 2 more weeks, she says. Slice by slice, I shall eat it with my fingers with a frosty glass of milk right out of the icebox. The neighbors will press their noses against the window while I consume every nocturnal crumb, gazing into the kitchen with envy. I'll gorge myself on this cake while standing at the counter. I won't invite anybody. I'm not anybody after all. Who are you to gaze at me while I indulge in a pleasure, a black spice cake, 19 eggs, and enough pounds of butter to sate the appetite for the rest of one's flesh-bound existence? Bite on bite, I savor the thick scent of solitude, relishing this sweet molasses of seclusion. At night, I dream of crystallized violets set atop fondant icing the color of licorice, tier after tier of dressed cake like a lacquered cabinet of sugar and spice. The poet appears in this dream wearing her famous dress while carrying a platter of cake. Why do you pose such questions of me, she says, petulantly flinging up her hands. All I want is my cake and eat it too. Nonsense. Who are you? Nobody. Thank you.
Oh gosh, what a great one to end on. Because I haven't had dessert yet, and some spice cake sounds really good. Oh, Kelsey's giving you some love. Kelsey, hey, while Kelsey's clapping there, I want to say thank you to my students who are here with us tonight. Jose, Kelsey, Presley, Chris, and Connor, I see you. Karen, I don't know, everybody, isn't it great when brilliant people write poetry? I mean, come on, that was just lovely. And and any poet that can get a squash blossom in a poem, and then also echolalia, I mean, wow. Listen, the Emily Dickinson thing that you need though, have you seen the Book of Envelope Poems? That, I love that. When I used to teach in person on a thing called a campus, I used to bring that book in and share it. Oh, hey, Gooden's got it. Yeah, that is the book to get. That's the Emily Dickinson book. You know, paper wasn't like everywhere in the recycle bins then, right? So, and she was just such a force that any paper lying around, she would write these poems on these envelopes, on the back, on the front, inside and out. I mean, and those facsimiles, they're just gorgeous. Oh yeah, there you go. See, right there. We would have some of Gooden's poems, envelope poems too, except they burned up in the fire, dang it. Listen, do you have any questions? I mean, listen, while your questions are coming in, we have got to give some love here to you all for being here. Arthur Z got some love in the chat. Thank you for honoring his poem in the anthology, which he wrote for Dear America. I mean, so Dear America comes out, and then Arthur Z wins the National Book Award and Jericho Brown wins the Pulitzer Prize. Are you, that's what you call the Dear America bump, okay? Right here, right here. Listen, Rena Espaillat is in the house, and she is just a national treasure. Rena, it's so good to see you with us. I know you had a stroke recently in October, and I'm so glad that you're back to all your wicked ways.
Yes, I am. Wickeder than before.
What's that?
Wickeder than before.
Okay, okay.
I want to say I love that book. I have shown it to everybody who comes to the house, and everywhere I read, I hold it up and I read something from it, because I think it's a real anthology for our time. I think that it's very timely. It's very, it's alive.
Oh,
in so many ways.
Thank you, Rena. And yeah, I wanted to call you out just so we could send you some love tonight, because I just think you're a treasure. Your ears should have been burning this week, because Ellen Bass is working on a craft book, and I'm telling, she's got a chapter on form, and I'm trying to convince her to put your bilingue poem in there. So I'll let you know how that goes.
Thank you.
And let's see, we got a note here from Simmons. And while we're on the subject of Arthur Z, Southern Utah University student. Oh yeah, the Eileen Perry interview of Arthur Z is on terrain.org to check out. And apparently word has it that terrain.org is going to have the definitive review of Arthur's The Glass Constellation, which is his newest. It's an incredible tome. Is it tome? Tome. It's a chunko book. I mean, it's like you could build a house with that thing. So hey, any questions here? I didn't see any questions. I'm just seeing some beautiful faces and smiles. Elizabeth Dodd giving Rena some love. Oh yeah, Jan Wallace is here giving Kimberly some love. I mean, look at that. So what do you hire Kim Berwick to be a reviewer for your book, do some editing, and then it wins some award. Okay, well, there you go. Jan Wallace, everybody. So, hey, Kevin, how was it? Was it fun being on NPR?
It was nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they cut all of my ums and stutterings out and made me sound somewhat intelligent. So I was very grateful.
You sounded really good. And you were on, I remember when Anaphora came out, you were on one of my new favorite podcasts is To the Best of Our Knowledge. And I remember you were on that show too, and they were talking about what it means to be a native-ish poet, how you're Caucasian, but you grew up on the Flathead Reservation, and all your family, as I noted in the bio, your stepfather and your brothers, all native, and I thought that was really fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah. I came up with the term after I should have said native adjacent.
Native adjacent.
Would have been appropriate.
Well, and
what Kevin's too shy to say though is that he was interviewed a second time for New Hampshire Public Radio, and the interview is forthcoming.
Oh, good. Oh, did New Hampshire Public Radio pick it up from the national one?
They wanted to do their own interview, so I drove down to Concord and sat in the studio. It was kind of like Howard Stern, but not as ribald.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's really good.
I think that kind of mixing is what we need a lot more of.
Yeah. That's the kind of mixing you see in Rena's work, that interlingual work,
Oh.
and
We
some of
need to speak to
Karen's.
one another. We need to
Some of-
speak to one another.
Karen's work. Listen, I got to tell you, I was going to tell you because this is fun. I remember when Kevin went to present. He was at the Geraldine R. Dodge Festival. He was one of the presenters, and I asked him. I said, "Was Bill Moyers there?" And he said, "No." And I'm glad, because if he had been there, I would have peed my pants. And that's a quote. You can take that one to the bank. And that's when I knew this guy was not going to kick my butt. Okay. But later, for fun, go check out. Everybody tonight should go to the Kevin Gooden photo on the Poetry Magazine website later, and you'll see why it took me 3 years to follow up on Juniper's advice and contact him and say, "Hey, I hear you're kind of cool and a good poet. Juniper says I should get to know you." But I was running scared for 3 years.
Can I make a quick shout out, Derek and Simmons?
Please.
So I think her screen is muted. You can't see her, but the amazing poet Jill Osier, who won the Yale Younger Poets, The Solace Is Not the Lullaby, who was tragically run over by a truck, has just made it out of the hospital and is learning to walk again. And that is just amazing. So I want all of you to go out and buy her book and read her words, because it's pretty freaking awesome.
Oh my gosh, that's so good to hear, Kim.
So I won't embarrass her further. And
Is she here? Is she here?
She's under, she and her partner Kyle Mellon, who's a
Okay.
fiction writer,
Well,
are.
geez, Jill. Oh my gosh,
I wanted to make a shout out about her amazing work and her just amazing stamina.
Yeah, Jessica Faust had told me about the accident, and I've been worried about you ever since. So it's great to have this update, Jill. So
I think
glad.
there's a link to her book on the Yale website.
Yeah, beautiful book. It was Jessica and the Southern Review that introduced me to Jill's work many years ago. I was reading her poems regularly in there, and I know you've got many fans at terrain.org. I know Annie McDonald reads you too. So yeah, that's that dark cover, the Yale Younger, the dark cover book, gorgeous. The Solace Is Not the Lullaby. Yeah.
I would like to get personal. Speaking of amazing, Derek, you promised to bring your daughter back on the program sometime, because I would love to see her again and hear her read again. Would you tell her from me, please, that I have missed her?
Hey, I'll send you a link. We'll do a private. Here's what we'll do. We'll get Levi Gooden. We'll get Levi Gooden and Zoe Sheffield maybe together to share some poems for you. Oh, hey, I was really excited, Rena. Zoe let me send in some of her poems to the new Rattle Young Poets anthology. So I know they're reading for that right now. And Zoe and Kelsey both had a few poems. So
oh, that's marvelous. Terrific.
Hold on here. Kim, you got some competition. Rebecca Ramston says that photo of Kevin on Poetry Foundation is hot. H-O-T. Hot? Are you kidding me? You must like Vin Diesel or something. You're one of those Vin Diesel people.
I agree. It is hot. It's a great photo.
Oh, that's scary as hell.
When he's like a little cuddly bear, it makes the photo even that much better.
I know.
I think you can see how red he's turning in his office.
He's turning red. Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I know. Well, we should probably let you all go. That's a good note. Kevin as Huggy Bear is a good note. We've had a great Kevin sandwich tonight. That's why we put him right in the middle, because he's that sweet. And yeah, thank you all for his poetry is hot too. Geez, Rebecca. Woo!
Thank you for hosting us. Thank you, Karen. For
She's a
joining us.
troublemaker.
Yeah, she is a troublemaker, just like someone else I know, Rena. Hey, yeah, thank you, Kimberly, Karen, Kevin, for sharing your poems with us tonight. Such a beautiful evening. Katrina, good to see you. Thank you for being here tonight. Katrina is going to be one of our Cascadia poets. Well, more information coming on that down the road.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you so
Good night,
much.
everybody. Sleep well.
Well, let me jump in real quickly and also extend my thanks to Kim and Kevin and Karen, and of course Derek and everybody else for joining us. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and hopefully you get some time off. And we'll look to see you online in January when we host our next
Yeah,
reading.
you all have a lot to give thanks for.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.